within the various ministries of the government. We would like to apologize, first of all, for the late start. The Prime Minister would have come here straight from Trinidad and Tobago just to cement how pivotal it is for, how critical it is for him to engage with the media to ensure that the public is abreast of the happenings. Good governance, transparency, accountability, and integrity are of paramount importance to this administration. In this vein, we have collaborated with the Media Association of St. Kitts and Nevis to have a rotation of representatives from the various media houses here in St. Kitts and Nevis to sit with the PM and address the areas of concern or interest that they may have. With us today, we have Mr. Devon Cornelius of WINNFM, Mr. Jason Davis of ZIZ Broadcasting Corporation, and Mr. Glenn Batt of SKN Newsline. Unfortunately, the observer was unable to attend today. And I would like to thank you all for coming out. As usual, you will state your names and the media houses that you represent before posing your questions. You can ask 2 questions at a time to allow the Prime Minister to respond accordingly. I'll hand over to Prime Minister Honorable Dr. Terrance Drew at this point to give his opening remarks before we engage the media.
Thank you very much, Madam of Ceremonies. I want to really say that I am always thankful when I have the opportunity to speak to our people, albeit through the media today. I think it's important, as was said in the opening, that we maintain a good communication with our people, dealing with the issues that are affecting our federation. As you are aware, I recently traveled to Washington, D.C. for the World Bank IMF spring meetings, my first spring meetings, and I thought it was extremely necessary for me as the Prime Minister and the Minister of Finance to attend. While there, I scheduled and met with various nationals. I actually had a town hall meeting with the nationals in Washington, D.C., and I also participated in a walk, an annual walk there in Washington, D.C., which took place throughout the mall there in Washington, D.C., and had the opportunity to visit the African American Museum, which was quite an exhilarating visit, a visit that I would really recommend for our people to do if they happen to be in the Washington, D.C. area. I also, while traveling, went from Washington, D.C., went down to Trinidad and Tobago for the regional symposium, which was held under the theme Violence as a Public Health Issue, the Crime Challenge. This was hosted by the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, Prime Minister Rowley, and the various heads of CARICOM were invited. I'll speak more to that as we go further into this interaction. So on Wednesday, I attended a meeting with Acting Director, Mr. Nigel Chalk of Western Hemisphere Department of the IMF, which included Caribbean Ministers of Finance and Central Bank Governors. I spoke on the topic, reaping opportunities from green energy. We discussed pertinent global matters of regional and national importance among them. And among them, we discussed finance, climate change, global warming, and renewable energy, the challenges faced by small island developing states and efforts to adapt, find solutions to, and mitigate the deleterious effects of global warming. During my presentation, I shed light on several projects our Federation will be undertaking to respond to some of those challenges. Our administration has been actively at work in sourcing the required funding from the Caribbean Development Bank to start the process to build a 30-megawatt plant by 2025. As I've said before, this is a joint effort between the Nevis Island Administration and the federal government. We are approaching this as a federal resource. We intend to begin drilling activities later this year in talking to the CDB, we hope to begin by summer, and we are enthusiastic about the prospect of accomplishing our objective of complete energy independence, even as we acknowledge the present domestic demand of 28 megawatts of power here on St. Kitts and the potential for an additional supply to be provided by other renewable sources. To further demonstrate our innovative thrust, we are investigating the possibility of exporting geothermal energy to other islands, which will greatly enhance our prospects for economic growth and sustainability, part of our thrust of creating energy as a sector. This underscores the vision that we hold, and the strong commitment which I gave during my budget address in December to transform St. Kitts and Nevis into a sustainable island state. Now, with respect to the diaspora meeting, I had a very fruitful and productive diaspora meeting, as I would have mentioned to our people who are living in the United States. It is a high priority of mine to engage with nationals whenever I can. And as I said, it is important that we do this, not just when we think elections are approaching, but to keep our diaspora engaged so that they can be a fundamental part of nation building. I think that meeting was very fruitful, and we will, of course, collect the names of our people and how they can contribute to nation building here, even though they are abroad. The Diaspora Secretariat, which is being put together in a more robust way, will be part of that process, a fundamental part of that process. We all have to work together to achieve the agenda of transforming our nation into a sustainable island state. And then the last part of my visit was the regional symposium, as I've said, dealing with violence, not just crime, but violence from a public health perspective, which took place in Trinidad. It has become evident that an evidence-based approach is needed to tackle the crime and violence challenge here in the Caribbean region. In my presentation, I made mention of Marcus Garvey, an outstanding political activist who once said, "Man is a product of his mind." In other words, in reference to violence, it can be said that violence is a learned behavior. However, as a medical doctor, I tend to seek for evidence analyzing data. I tend to look at research. It is ingrained within me that, and I believe, and what is learned can be unlearned. If there is a definition of the issue, an early application of best practice interventions, and I've said before, this must be based on science and evidence. And therefore, I feel hopeful that the crime and violence situation within the Caribbean can be addressed effectively with proper analysis of the evidence and data that has been collated over the years, and in doing so, coming up with solutions which are already out there. And I've said that we need the political will, not only as a nation, where we will, of course, exhibit that will to implement what is necessary to deal with violence and crime, but across the region, it is obvious and imperative that we work together so that we can share resources, experience, and so forth, so that all of us can tackle this issue that is affecting the whole of the Caribbean region. I would say that the Caribbean region is identified as one of the most violent places on earth. However, I am hopeful again because evidence shows that we can really tackle this issue, and we have decided together to tackle it. I must point out that Dr. Isben Williams, who is a psychiatrist from St. Kitts and Nevis, gave the keynote address at this symposium. And I want to applaud him for doing an excellent job, and his research over the years, of course, really was in dealing with crime and violence from a public health standpoint, evidence-based, and I think he is now being recognized that he has, I would say, some of the answers to deal with this issue. So the increasing acceptance within the public health community of the importance of behavioral factors in the etiology and prevention of disease encourage public health professionals to believe that they could likewise overcome the same behavioral challenges underlying interpersonal violence and suicidal behavior. Went on to say, I also believe that a similar approach can be taken to address the issue of crime and violence. Defining the nature and extent of violence is a necessary first step towards fully comprehending the phenomenon of violence. As a region, I strongly believe we are taking the right approach and will yield tremendous results now and in the future. St. Kitts and Nevis is ready and willing to move forward from research, evidence, and experience to robust and sustained action as we implement these evidence-based solutions along with our Caribbean partners and international partners as well. Your government has not rested on its laurels since assuming office in August last year. In fact, we have moved beyond merely being aspirational to being constantly intentional in our efforts to advance our beloved St. Kitts and Nevis. We are committed and focused on creative, innovative, transformative, and effective change. And I want to thank you, of course, for allowing me the opportunity to make that opening statement. And I will now have a dialogue with members of the press so that we can delve deeper into some of the issues that I would have outlined here and to expound more on the essence of my trip and how this trip would positively impact our Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. So I want to thank the media for your patience and waiting for me. You know, regional travel is a challenge, as we know. But I'm here, and I think we can start the dialogue.
Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister Devon Cornelius. As you made mention of the World Bank IMF spring meetings, the IMF said that Caribbean economies are heavily dependent on revenue from CBA programs. What is your administration doing to cut back on the amount we spend from said program to support the economy? Thank you.
I want to thank you very much, Mr. Cornelius, for that question, because that is one of the things that I travel to discuss with the IMF and also discuss with the World Bank when it comes to the economies, our economy specifically, and economies of small island states. As you know, during the pandemic, other areas of the economy would have contracted. I also am of the very firm belief that the position taken by the former administration in relying so heavily on one sector, in the sense that we would have learned over the years that when we were heavily dependent on tourism, we sought to develop other sectors so that we can have a diversified economy. And the issue is that during that time, we saw the contraction of multiple areas within the economy. For example, manufacturing, as a number of the factories closed down. Travel, tourism was even punished as well, because we know that St. Kitts and Nevis was kept locked down up to August 7th when we made the scientific decision to lift the restrictions and open up the economy. We could have done this since in April, May. And because we didn't do that, St. Kitts Nevis has the slowest recovery of the tourism sector within the OECS. This, of course, has implications, serious implications. When you have unnecessary restrictions that are just based on political grounds and not based on scientific grounds and are not kept to protect the people, these are the kind of consequences that you have. And that translates into tens of millions of dollars. Money that could have been used, for example, other social programs. But instead of that, tourism was kept stifled. The manufacturing sector started to dwindle. Agriculture, as we know, we heard then that the boats were coming. And other areas within the economy suffered as a result. And so we were almost going back to what we call the monocrop days when sugar was king, to almost making CBI king. Of course, CBI is a good sector. We have done a lot since we got into office to protect it. I will speak further to that as time goes by. But this is what they're saying to me and to us, that we had become too dependent. In seeing that, that is why we opened up the economy so quickly. August 5th, the election, August 7th, restrictions lifted. Minister of Tourism traveling to quickly meet with those stakeholders, cruise ship, interregional airlines, hoteliers and others saying St. Kitts is open, please come to St. Kitts. We were able to get some rebound in tourists, in the cruise tourism. We were able to get some rebound in airlift. We were able to get some rebound in stays, as they call it, beds in heads, heads in beds, people staying. We were able to have a carnival such that it could be at a magnitude to attract people to St. Kitts and Nevis, so that we can have the tourist sector being imbued with life again. And so we were able to salvage a lot of it, even though significant damage was done. And so the only way we can really deal with this is a way that we have known before. We have to diversify the economy. And so bringing back tourism, that has led to more diversification of the economy. The other things that we had to look at outside of that is infrastructural development. That is why we are moving to have our massive housing program rolled out. Construction is important. That is why we have been discussing other investments in the economy. Manufacturing in the food sector, which we have signed on to with the Afrexim Bank, looking at producing chicken, fish, collaborating with our people. As I talk today, investors into the chicken industry will be coming in, and that will help to even boost our own local people. So we have been pursuing a number of projects which we are going to launch. The road project in St. Peter's, the Plainfield in Connery. We have a number of capital projects that we want to get going. But of course the government is young, and we had to make sure that we put things in place that public works have been doing. So that sector has to also develop. So we are looking at pushing the manufacturing sector. We are looking at pushing agriculture. We are looking at tourism and entertainment and the orange economy. That is why we want a robust music festival. We want people to come into St. Kitts. We want St. Kitts to continue to be the buzziest country, because that is how we are going to continue to expand our tourism sector. And then come on to energy. And that is why we are pursuing geothermal so aggressively, solar energy so aggressively, because we believe we have the opportunity to create energy as a sector, or at the very least, cut down on the subsidies through a more reasonable cost energy source. Right now it's costing the government about $9 to $10 million per month. So energy subsidy is a social program in and by itself, so that people can afford to pay for energy, especially in this post-COVID time. And so we will pursue these other aspects of the economy to expand them so that we can diversify the economy and limit our dependence on just one sector. And we think that we are on the right path to doing that. We have discussed this vigorously with the World Bank, the IMF, and so forth. And we will see a number of things continue to take place. So I'm pleased with the result that we have seen thus far from tourism, albeit we are lagging behind. I'm also pleased that we have investors coming in looking at the manufacturing sector, including agriculture as well. Also happy that we are looking at energy as a sector and really pushing to have a renewable energy source. And then the construction sector or the infrastructural sector, where we are now dealing with getting ready to push out our housing program and a number of other capital projects that we have on the books which will be rolled out as well. So the answer to that question, as I've said, is really to diversify the economy, and we have started to put things in place to do that.
Jason Davis, Zediza Broadcasting Corporation. With respect to the symposium in Trinidad and Tobago on violence as a public health issue, I know there, as you mentioned before, there was a need for an evidence-based approach in order to address it. Now, can you speak to specifics as to what could and may be done in the Federation to address the recent upsurge in crime here?
Right. Thank you very much. I would say from the recent upsurge, I just say it's a Caribbean phenomenon. There are a number of factors that are contributing to this phenomenon in the Caribbean presently. One is the opening up of the country. When you're locked down and have restrictions, it restricts everything. And that in itself is a measure. So lifting the restriction is, of course, can be a risk factor for an upsurge, as the other Caribbean countries would have seen as well. That's one. And so we know that post-COVID that happened. In doing so, though, I want to say that the security forces have responded positively and to some extent proactively as well. And they have put into place Operation Reassurance. And I want to thank the Commissioner of Police, Commissioner Sutton, and of course the Commander of the Defense Force, Comrie, who have been working closely together along with the other agencies to ensure that we have a systematic approach to deal with the current situation. And I think that the approach is yielding results. That's one. Now, in dealing with violence, and not just crime, but violence, the statistics show, and Dr. Isben Williams, who is a psychiatrist here, has been studying this issue. And he has long been saying in the Caribbean that we are not dealing with the root cause of violence effectively. And interestingly enough, he and Prime Minister Rowley are good friends, and they were in UE together. And for years, as Rowley explained, Dr. Isben Williams has been saying to the Caribbean, unless you take this type of scientific approach, the Caribbean will not be able to arrest this situation. And he's been saying it for many years, maybe decades. And he said at some point, as Rowley expressed, that Dr. Williams would have said to him, this will force you all together at some point in history. And so we came together because the whole Caribbean is affected. And so based on the evidence, it is shown what is taking place from a scientific standpoint. I've read something here that Marcus Garvey said here in St. Kitts in 1937, 2 years after the Buckley's uprising, that a man is the product of his mind. He recognized very quickly that if there are issues of the mind, there will be issues in the society. What is looking at this from a public health standpoint is getting the scientific data. We know that persons who tend to move on to commit crime or violence, commit violent acts, are persons who very early in their childhood would have suffered trauma. Trauma through violence in the home, physical, verbal, sexual. And these damaged small minds, if they are not given the opportunity to heal, a damaged mind or a traumatized child, as was said at the forum, becomes a dangerous adult. And this was said by a psychiatrist from Bahamas, a leading psychiatrist. A damaged child becomes a dangerous adult. And so the evidence has shown that if you intervene early with a number of evidence-based approaches, you can really solve the problem. I said in my speech, if you would have listened to it, that I was very hopeful because as a medical doctor, I look at the data and the data has a lot of hope and the solutions are there as well. And so this is not a problem that we don't know about. This is not a problem that we don't have solutions for. And we have one of the leading experts in the Caribbean right here, Dr. Isben Williams. And let me tell you what I'm going to do. I called the Minister of Education, the Honorable Dr. Jeffrey Hanley, the Deputy Prime Minister, and asked him to put in place quickly a task force to look at making preschool accessible for all of our preschoolers. Because the earlier we intervene is the more success we will have. And also to look at child care for children who are not yet preschool age but need to have the opportunity to be in a wholesome environment. Because the research showed that between 0 and 5, if you get it right, it is very unlikely you'll get it wrong after that. But if you get it wrong between 0 and 5, it becomes extremely difficult to correct it. That is why I think it was mentioned that maybe in the primary school you will find people gravitating to gangs. That is known if you don't intervene early enough and you have an environment where a particular lifestyle is glorified, it can draw vulnerable people to it. And so, therefore, that is one of the things we will look at. The other thing we look at that we have joined on to is that we have to impress on the United States of America to stop the guns from coming to the Caribbean. The United States of America has to do its part. And we are saying to the United States of America that we have worked with you when it comes to drugs going up north, and we are saying, work with us to stop the guns from coming south. Because we know guns plus gangs plus drugs equal violence, murders. We know that. We can control the others, but we cannot control the gun flow alone. The United States has to play its part. And so we are impressing upon them to play their part. So that is one of the things in terms of our diplomacy has to be a part of the solution in asking the United States to put in place robust measures to stop the flow of guns to the Caribbean. So we'll be dealing with it from that end in terms of preschool and so forth, dealing with the diplomacy part to really try to stem the flow of guns. And I want to thank the United States of America for they have given to us a boat, brand new, to surveil our waters, and they're also helping us with onshore radar, which will be implemented very quickly, so that we can monitor all of our borders. We'll be able to see every boat, anything that come into our waters, our marine space. And secondly, we will be able to respond if we have to respond, because we know that porous borders mean that people will be using this as a transshipment point, and not only a transshipment point, but to drop drugs and guns here. And so we want to tighten up on that, and that is another measure. So we're going to inaugurate the boat just now, and we're going to have the onshore radar before summer this year. That is another measure that we have taken. Another measure that we have taken is for the police and the military to work close. We have put 2 platoons from the military, and I know that the military is asking the Governor General to give the military officers about 6 months powers to arrest. But of course, they'll be working along with the police, because we recognize we have to do that as well. And with all of that, we are also pursuing active engagement among those who are in these organizations to deal with it from a mediation standpoint as well. So we are looking at it, deal with it from a mediation standpoint, but also robust police tactics to detect and to make sure we work hard to get the guns off the streets, and those who we know are involved in criminal activities, to make sure that we do the policing that we have to. And again, this week you'll see that presently there's training going on for the police force. I'm sure you would have seen it, including we have brought in an expert to deal with community policing. And I want to thank Commissioner Sutton once again because he believes in evidence-based policing, and they have started the training this week. And we'll do a series of critical training for the police officers. We will spruce up where we have to, give powers to the military where we have to, get them to work together, and then engagement of those who are involved. We will work on securing our borders. And while we are doing all of that, diplomacy to ask the United States to partner. The United States have worked well with us, a good partner for St. Kitts and Nevis and the Caribbean. We just have to strengthen our partnership and stopping the flow of guns to the Caribbean. And at the same time, we will be heavily investing in our schools, our preschool and care to make sure that our people at early ages, they get the intervention that they need to prevent damaged minds from becoming damaged adults. I mean, dangerous adults, as was said. So those are the measures we are undertaking presently.
I just want to piggyback on one specific point you raised. You said you would also be attacking this from a mediation standpoint. I'm going to assume you mean mediation with the gang members and the offenders?
Yes.
So how will this differ from the initial mediation that was done, which led to the peace program?
Well, you call it that. I think they call it the alternative lifestyle. Yes. I've spoken to that program before, that at some point the men came together and decided they wanted to end the violence. I have said that multiple times. And if you check the history, you would recognize that that was the truth. Mediation always have to be a part of it. You go to Barbados has a program similar to that. I will not go into all the details of how that is being done. But the mediation means that, one, you have strong police tactics to detect crime and to let people know you commit crime, you have to be punishable by it. But mediation means, look, this can't continue like this. We have to stop this. And that is a part of it as well. So this has to be a multi-pronged approach. But what we will not do is try to say to people that I'll deliberately pay you not to do something. What does that do? People then can hold the government hostage. You can extort the government. That approach was costing the government almost $50 million per year and going up. Totally unsustainable. So we have to look for sustainable measures in which to deal with this. And that is a big difference, a big, big, big difference. We believe that a program is necessary to engage young people, get them involved in training and employment, and we remunerate them for that. But we also believe that you cannot have somebody and say, I'm paying you not to do this. That does not serve the person and it does not serve the state. $50-something million we head into. That is totally unsustainable. We have sustainable scientific ways in which we can approach this problem. So that is a big difference. The unsustainability of what was taking place. And we have the proof. We have the money. We're talking millions upon millions upon millions. But we can continue to give young people opportunities in sustained ways that will benefit both the young person and the society. And so we can see positive results. And so there's some revamping of that, which we'll speak about based on evidence. And we'll be speaking about that approach very shortly, I will say, within the next month, because we're in the process of putting the full program together.
Just to follow up on the symposium.
Yes.
Coming out of that symposium, is there any formal agreement or structures that are to follow with regards to addressing those issues you've talked about?
Right, very good. Yes, we are putting out, the CARICOM is supposed to release today, the communique. And the communique will speak to a number of critical. I wouldn't speak to the matters of the communique yet, until the communique comes out. So that will be the official statement from the CARICOM. So I wouldn't preempt it. But you'll have other opportunities to ask me about it. And once you follow CARICOM, you should get that before the day is done. And then we can further discuss them. So I'll give CARICOM the opportunity to first present its communique in an official way, and then the discussion can ensue subsequently. However, I would say that yes, we have come up with a number of common things that we'll do. Why? CARICOM has 3 fundamental pillars, and we are adding the 4th one, which is this one, right? And that is the prominence that we are giving it. When that is done like that, it means that CARICOM now would be asked to come up with action plans. With action plans, of course, implementation. But outside of that, to get the funding necessary. Just like how we have done across the region with other type of program. For example, HIV/AIDS was not handled by one country, was handled by CARICOM, and it's a huge success. NCDs, non-communicable chronic diseases, is now being attacked from a CARICOM level, and the resources flowing into the CARICOM is helping each country. And we are saying if we have been successful dealing with critical matters that affect all of us across the CARICOM, why is it a violence is an issue that is affecting all of us? Why not come together and come up with common sense policies, scientific based policies, and get the resources to implement measures to deal with it? So I'm very, very hopeful, and so you'll see a number of those things come out in the communique, and then we can discuss further.
Now, in your capacity as Minister of National Security, are immigration policies in St. Kitts and Nevis too lax or too relaxed? Because there are some people who claim that there are persons who are entering the country who should not be allowed to enter. You're talking about the use of fake documents, the use of the abuse of visas, the abuse of work permits, etc. The inability to sustain themselves for those who are allowed to come in for 6 months, etc. So what is happening on that front, and what should be expected, and put this also in the context of OECS and CARICOM treaties?
Now, I would say that OECS and CARICOM treaties, you can comply with them without any type of violation of the immigration laws. As I've said before, when we took office, there were systematic, deliberate, criminal activities that the government then allowed when it came to immigration, and I dare say participated in. And I'm talking about the fake marriages with fake documents. Just today I asked the PS to give me an update, and she's going to send me the stats. From our research, we have documented, well documented, about 200 of them. We have boxes of these things that we have to mull through. Fake documents to get marriage documents. So we have to send back to the country of origin to send us the legitimate documentation. And what we're uncovering is that these persons who participated in it could not have gotten it done unless there was a systematic approach to allow it for whatever reasons. One, we are finding out, for monetary reasons. I mean, this is so sad that when you look at what took place in St. Kitts and Nevis, you could not believe that we had become that. So some of the things you're talking about, we are actually putting things in place to deal with them. There are still some of that. For example, if we send back to a country to get the right documentation, sometimes we take 4 to 6 weeks, because from the very country, people will get false documentation and bring the false documentation here. So now we have to go into the process of verifying if that documentation was legit or not. At this time, as far as I know, we have stopped visas to certain countries until June. So if there are visas that are being given out, then it means that we will have to investigate that. But as far as I'm aware, we have taken the decision to hold on visas in certain areas. And then documentation, if you come in and you want to participate in a particular type of immigration status, meaning that there are different, you can come in under a different type of status, depending. You can come as a temporary resident, CSME, stuff like that. That we want to make sure that whatever is presented, the documentation is correct. So we are not against any of that, and that we enforce the laws. So complying with the treaties does not mean that one has to break the laws at all. Not only that, you see, we are dealing with other type of immigration issues, the breaching of our borders, for example. We saw what happened with the Haitians, with the boat, and there's people participating in human trafficking. As you know, we have a very progressive and humanistic approach to them. We saw what happened with the Africans, the Cameroonians as well. We have discussed with Antigua who will take them back. So those are other issues that we are looking at. So we have taken some strict measures when it comes to immigration. When it comes to marriage, we are now putting a process in place where we have to verify your documentation from source. That might take a little bit longer. That is why in any country where you go to get married, you don't rush a citizenship after you get married. In America, for example, you get a residency and then you get your citizenship after. Even, for example, let's choose the Dominican Republic. If you go there, you don't become a citizen right away. You be married, you become a resident, then you become a citizen. So why is it that is not being applied here? People who are getting married today and literally tomorrow get a citizenship. Who else can allow that? Except a government allow that. So when it comes to immigration, there's a lot of cleaning up to do. And we recognize that bad. And we have started the process. We have at least arrested the fake marriages. We have at least arrested certain visas. There is more work to be done, and we are pursuing that work. And let me say, we are not targeting anybody, because the position we took, as you can see, we did not deport anybody after the elections. We did not go into mass deportation of anybody. And a matter of fact, because when your COVID was tough, businesses were closed, people couldn't find jobs and so forth, we know that people couldn't pay, for example, their regular work permit and so forth, those who are here. And so we said, look, let's close off everything, and those who are here, let's give them an amnesty. Let's be at least humanistic in our approach to deal with those who are here. People who are here, construction shut down, they couldn't continue to work because they play a part in the economy as well. And therefore, we said, look, we have to treat people humanely, and we're not going to just take people and rush them out the country, create an amnesty period while we stop the marriages and investigate what's going on. Well, citizenship through marriage and see what's going on, because people can still continue to get married. And they should if they love and they find the right person, not just for citizenship. And secondly, to deal with the visas. And those who are inside, let's process them and document them in a humane way. And so we have approached those from their different nationalities. As I said, I would not have treated them any less than human. But at the same time, while we are being humane with respect to our immigration laws, we have to also, our immigration policy, we have to also respect the law. We are a country of laws, the rule of law is important, and we have to abide by it. But at the same time, it does not mean that we cannot be progressive in our thinking with respect to the immigration issue.
Now, in regards to the idea of diversifying the economy, now there are some claims that many persons from outside are sort of taking over a lot of the economic activities. I know your administration has established a Ministry of Entrepreneurship. Now, how do you view the use of CBI, some of the CBI revenue, to sort of encourage local entrepreneurship, perhaps in specific or selected areas, taking persons perhaps through a training program, then providing some grant or starter funds to create a sort of Head Start program. And hopefully that will lead to certain kinds of businesses, perhaps in agriculture, in food processing, tourism, and so forth. What's your concept of pushing local entrepreneurship in this manner?
Right. Thank you again. As you know, we have a Ministry of Small Business, because in diversifying the economy, we think that entrepreneurship and small business ownership has to be a part of it as well. That ministry is being built out as we speak, and is almost complete. They had, I think, is SPDC, that is on Princess Street, I think. and we are going to expand that because this is how we think. And the idea of that is to create a one-stop shop. So if you have a young man, let's say he's a mechanic, and he said, look, I want to start a mechanic business. The idea is he can enter into that ministry and say, look, I am qualified as a mechanic, I want to start a mechanic shop. At that point, he's supposed to be taken, be given the resource of how to develop a business plan, give him training as to how to run a business. And then, once that is done, allow him to access a very low interest loan, very low interest with extremely reasonable condition, nothing to stress him or strain him. And once he does that, he can then start his business. We want to set up also an incubator where they can have that type of practice. But apart from that, we want there to also be resources in terms of expertise to walk along with that new business owner of how to manage the business. And that is what the small business ministry is pursuing, and we're going to expand that. So that exactly what you said is exactly what we want to do with respect to the small business ministry. And that is why we call it small business ministry, because entrepreneurship, some people, what does that mean? But I think the common man understands what small business means, right? And that will create a buzz that, look, I can get into a small business as well. So we want to give it that focus. We want to give it that prominence so that exactly what we want to achieve could be achieved. So we are pursuing it. And you can reach out to the Small Business Ministry, or you can reach out to the Minister, Honorable Samuel Duggins, to get more in-depth information on it, so that you can see how the program is being set up. But you are right, we are making those funds available so that our people can have the opportunity to enter into businesses as well. However, we want to give them the other support that they need so that they can be successful. Because too many times somebody go, they get the resources, where's the business? No business set up. I would also say that was part of the scheme that took place in the Development Bank under the last administration. Write up a loan, come, get the loan, no business. People who get the loan, they come back and give $10,000 to whoever they give the $10,000 to, or $20,000. That was a scheme again to get money. So you look on the books, a lot of money for businesses, can't find the businesses, not even the start of a business. These are the travesties that took place in immigration, in the bank. That is why we suffered a deficit last year. That is why the Development Bank was on the verge of collapse. That is why bad policies again affected the National Bank. National Bank, for the first time in its history, I think, I might be corrected, but I'm almost certain, I'm sure, for the first time, could not pay a dividend, suffered a loss. So we had to take over a banking sector and try to get it back on track. And so many of these very difficult situations, the CBI, the banks and so forth, we had to stabilize these things. And that is why I thought it was important that I go to the spring meeting and spend the time that I spent there so that we can stabilize our economy and diversify it so that we can create a sustainable island state. Because as the IMF is saying, if you ever have to depend on one sector to carry your whole economy, that is unsustainable and it makes you very vulnerable. And as the Prime Minister and Cabinet, that we have taken the decision that that is not good enough. And so we're going to work hard. We're going to have to make decisions, sometimes tough decisions, but decisions necessary to keep St. Kitts and Nevis strong. But always, always working on behalf of the people.
As you spoke about the regional symposium on violence, I want to turn the attention to national security. We've had 9 murders so far since January. Has the police been able to determine the motive for these murders? Are they connected? And as you spoke about the development bank, the audit report, the forensic audit report, when will that be released? What is the status of that report? Thank you.
Yes, with respect to the report, I know you have asked about it already, Cornelius, but and you're rightfully asking, as I told you, because of the nature of the report and the information that is there, we'll put it through a process, and that will determine when we make it available. Just because of what we have uncovered with respect to the development bank and the activities that would have taken place there. With respect to what have taken place with the killings, of course, the police have basically done a lot of work, some of which it can reveal and some of it which it has to hold close. Not all, some of them are disconnected from the other, but we know that they were, the majority would have been connected to gang activity, which we know. And again, we say the formula for that type of things, gangs plus drugs plus guns, result in this. And that is why we are attacking them. The police has started the Operation Reassurance with the new Commissioner of Police, James Sutton. And I think that, we should give him an opportunity really to implement his program and to get to see the results of it. And I think he is having some level of success. Of course, it would be a difficult path ahead with many challenges, but he is taking an evidence-based approach, which is good. So they have gotten information and they are pursuing leads and so forth. I will not speak directly to the evidence and exactly what the police is doing in specifics, except to say that they have done work, that they have gotten evidence. I will say that as such. I will say that as such. And I would leave it up to the police to determine how much they can reveal at this time so that it doesn't compromise any of the work that they are presently doing.
Slightly related to national security and violence, I am wondering if there's anything you can say in relation to a possible response to the kidnapping of the father of the SKN honorary consul in Haiti.
Yes, thank you very much. We did receive the report sometime late last week about the kidnapping of the father of the honorary consul. We know that the situation in Haiti in terms of security is in a very precarious situation right now. We know that. We know that the CARICOM would have met multiple times to discuss how to show up Haiti. Even this week while we were there, Haiti came up on the agenda again, and they're taking it as far, I think, to the United Nations and so forth. What I would say with respect to that, we have gotten the report. We have gotten the report that he was kidnapped, that we have not gotten any other report that he has been, any harm, physical harm would have come to him. What I would say is that information is very sketchy because of the security system, security situation in Haiti. The formal media that are used to transmit information, those are basically broken down. So we are still waiting information. As a matter of fact, I would say the foreign minister reported to me that he initially received the information via WhatsApp. Just to show you how the situation in Haiti is. There is hardly any institution that we can really call and get some, confirmed, reliable information on it. So we are hoping for the best outcome, of course. We are hoping that common sense prevails. We are hoping that, he can go back to his family safely. That is our hope for him at this particular time. But as far as information, that is what we have received as far.
So are there any plans to possibly intervene?
Well, it depends. Well, intervene meaning dialoguing with other countries, other persons to determine how much we can help. We are dialoguing through the foreign ministry, and we'll continue to dialogue with who we can dialogue with. I don't know what you mean, intervene.
I don't know about sending
Yeah.
military support or actually having a presence there.
That military support is not even supported by any country in the world. As a matter of fact, the approach that the world wants to take is to support and strengthen the Haitian police. The thought is if you were to put boots on the ground in Haiti, you can create a worse situation. And so the decision has been, and a global decision really, at this point, not to put boots on the ground in Haiti, but to strengthen the police and allow it to be a Haitian-led type of operation, but of course supported. Yes.
Mr. Prime Minister, some weeks ago, there was some talk about the Social Security Board not being properly constituted, that it had more members on it than the Act allowed. For example, I understand that the talk was that it was 12 plus 6, and that occurred because of a situation where 6 members were not appropriately terminated from their service on the board. Can you comment to that situation at all?
So I have looked at the legality of it and have my legal advice on that, and that is not so at all. So I would basically say from my legal advice that that is not so. Okay?
All right. On the matter of the graduate loans to students,
Yes.
one person have contacted us and asked whether or not existing students
Right.
are being accommodated under the scheme.
Right. So the first thing we did, as a means to remove as much barriers from education. Education at the start of life and education later in life, post high school. We have made college tuition. We have eliminated college tuition. So any child in St. Kitts who is qualified to go to college will be able to go to college. That we have done. And that is costing us a few $1 million per year. But that is critical that our people have access. The other thing that we are seeking to do is to make more scholarships available so that more of our people can go overseas. And then the next thing we have done is the graduate finance program through the Development Bank, where we have brought student loans to the lowest percentage ever at 5% for all, for those who apply. And secondly, that you start paying back the loan 4 years, 3 months later, if you so wish. 4 years, 3 months later. And during the time you get the loan, and up to 4 years, 3 months later, there will be no interest accumulated. In the past, people would accumulate up to $15,000, sometimes more, of interest. So let's go, you get a child who comes from a family where the parents can't afford it. You know, financial resources are tight. Like, for example, I was in that situation. And let's say the child wants to go to university, let's say UE, and they want to go for a student loan. But the parents don't have anything to, the parents can't afford to pay interest while the child is away. The child can go, get a low interest student loan, and decide to pay back after he or she would have completed his or her studies. That would have saved them at least $15,000 in accumulated interest. So that child doesn't have to worry about who is paying the interest while he or she is away studying. And so that is a game changer, a paradigm shift. I don't know if any other countries in the Caribbean does anything like that, but that is a paradigm shift. So that's one. So I went through that so people can know that the program exists and how the program is going to function. And then after that, you have about a number of years, up to 15 years to pay it back. So your installments, even after you start to pay, will be relatively low so that you would have enough space to invest in a mortgage, pursue a business, or even pursue higher education. by doing that. So we made a promise that we'll make sure they get credit of that, so these students will get credit. And over time, it has been calculated that they would save maybe up to $100,000 in terms of interest and payback and so forth, depending on the size of the loan. So they will be saving significant amount of money that can be invested in other things. So they would have a real ease. Because you have people in St. Kitts, take a student loan, have to take 15 years, come back when they're 25, some 30, have to live in the parents' house for 10 years, 15 years, because by the time they pay the student loan of $2,000 and they're working for $4,000 as a new graduate, how much they're left with? $2,000 can't carry them. Sometimes it's very challenging and difficult. They can't have a car as a graduate. And therefore they stay at home. So if you add 10 to 30 or 15 to 25, you're talking about they're leaving home when they're 40, comfortably. You can't have somebody go away to study and have to wait until they're 40 to move out of their parents' home. And that is why we took that decision. Now with existing loan, we are in the process of analyzing existing loan because that is of great concern to us as well. So I would say to that person who asked you that, this has been set and now we are in the process of dealing with existing loan. And we will have some movement on that within the weeks to come.
Okay. There are some government properties around that are unfinished. The Prince building right in front of government quarters, and there is a police training complex building close to Nima that have not been, no work has been done on them for quite some time. What is the state of that? And in addition to those two, can you comment on what is the situation with the old Fort Thomas property, Fort Thomas Hotel property?
Right. Good, so let me talk to the Printry. We did an analysis on the Printry. We know how much is going to start, and we intend to start the Printry to finish it as soon as possible. And I will give some more details on it. It's his part, and we intend to have it done. So we did an analysis, how much to have it finished, and we are going to move on that very shortly. So that is where it is. However, that Printry, we had some issues with it, but we are really making sure that we complete it. All right? So we have already started that process. I think based on the numbers I got, and I want to be very specific, I probably can't get the numbers for you, but we even know how much it would cost to complete the Printry. The other one is the police training complex that was being funded by the Europeans. I met with the Europeans in Bahamas when I was there earlier, and I met with the ambassador in the last few weeks, and that was what we discussed. I would say that the project, from our perspective here in St. Kitts and Nevis, was badly managed. After the change in government in 2015, it was badly managed. And presently, there is no funding coming through the European Union anymore to complete it. We have asked Public Works to do an analysis of the building in terms of its infrastructural integrity and to do an analysis as to how much the building would cost for us to finish. We are committed to finishing it, but we are in the process of doing an analysis from a construction standpoint, an engineering standpoint, and also to source new funding to finish it because of the bad management that could have been finished under the previous administration, but because it came over from another administration, it was almost left abandoned. I'm not going to leave the Printry building abandoned because it came from another administration. Administration changes, but the government remains the same. That is government money. You can't allow government money or governments who are partnering with us on a number of critical issues, that those things be abandoned because there's a change in administration. And so we are going to complete that. And so that is what we are doing with the police training complex. We are very, very disappointed with what was done. The Europeans, the resources should have been managed better. We should have taken it more seriously. And this has set us back when we should be well ahead. So that was badly managed as well. When it comes to the Fort Thomas Hotel, that we are looking at, as you know, The issue with it is that you don't have one owner. You have different people who are involved in that. A number of persons have expressed interest in the Fort Thomas Hotel in terms of developing the Fort Thomas Hotel as a major project to be done. We know there are some issues with the undermining of the land that is there. But the government, the Prince, we have made a decision. The police complex, we have made a final decision. We have not made a final decision on the Fort Thomas as yet, but we are pursuing that. And when we do that, in all openness and transparency, we would love to relate that information. Again, we have just taken up the issue within the last 7 months. The other two issues were very critical and almost urgent, the Printree building and the building next to NEMA, and that is why we move very aggressively on them. While we are looking at the Fort Thomas Hotel, and we have persons who are expressing interest as well. But we have not made a final determination as to what would become of the Fort Thomas Hotel.
The prison project. What is the status of that project? Is
Well,
there any activity happening there? Can you tell us about the contract that was entered into from the last administration? Essentially, what's going on
Right.
there?
Well, the prison project, as you know, was part of the CBI project that was done heavily with contracts and so forth. So, you know, it's hard to get out of those type of things. And so therefore, what we are seeking to do is to make sure that the resources that would have been allotted to get it done, that the resources are there. That is what we are pursuing at this particular time. To tell you that we'll end a contract and abandon it, I will not say that. But we'll make sure that whatever was supposed to be derived from it for our country, that we should derive that. Right.
Any work is happening there as it is right now?
Well, there might be minor things being done, nothing heavily, but we are getting to the bottom of it. We will not say that it has to be abandoned either, just because it came from a previous administration. We know that there are critical issues surrounding it, but as I said, administration changes, but the government continues, and we have to protect the resources of the government. Okay? All right.
Thank you very much to the media houses for coming out and engaging with the Prime Minister, expressing your concerns.
Yes.
We will, of course, yes. Mr. Prime Minister, you will be given an opportunity to give your closing remarks.
Thank you very much.
Giving a bit of
yes.
expressing a bit of gratitude to the media houses and as well to our listening audience. So we have the Prime Minister give his closing remarks before we close out for today.
Oh, thank you very much. Yes, I am heading. One of the things I wanted to mention was the VAT Day. I know our citizens look forward to VAT Days. The VAT Day is scheduled to be the 28th of this month. We had promised that we'll give 3 VAT Days, and we are committed to that. We are also looking for any opportunity that will present itself for us to reduce taxes. And we have not taken those things off the table. We are a very young administration, just 7 months, and we are looking at that. But we want to make sure, just as we have done with the student finance program, the VAT Days were also a promise that we gave to our people, and it makes sense as well to have those opportunities, you know, increase economic activity, give the people at ease, especially during these post-COVID times. So, you know, I just wanted to highlight that to our people as well. I wanted to mention with respect to health, I see every time there's an issue, but people try to make issues out of every little thing. Quite interesting. If a common pit and drop at the hospital, it's an issue. What we have been doing there, we have done a number of things. We are going to resume very shortly eye surgery. As you know, with the previous administration, the machines had broken down. They had not purchased the machines again. We purchased the machines for eye surgery, and we are supposed to restart in the next couple of weeks. We have bought the major machine, which cost us hundreds of thousands of dollars. We have now bought the other smaller pieces, which are supposed to arrive today, plus the type of medication to be used. And the main ophthalmologist should be back to work today. So in quick order, we should be back to operating at the hospital. Again, we're not doing cataract surgeries in the Federation. The hospital was the main hub, and we hope to. So there are people who are blind presently because of that issue at the hospital. So tell them talk about that. I've also procured new dialysis machines because at the hospital we needed new dialysis machines. As you know, when we got there, we thought that there was not enough. As a medical doctor, I know that. And so we have procured. And so when they come in, I'll give the names and so forth of those who would have sourced them for us and so forth, the dialysis machines. We presently have issues with a lot of equipment at the hospital. It's as if the equipment were totally abandoned. We have problems with the anesthesiology equipment in the theater. We have problems with the cabinet that were mixing the chemotherapeutic drug. We have problems with making sure that the blood bank can take blood almost at any time. In every aspect of the hospital, there's a problem that was left to be dealt with. And I'm asking our people that they're trying to make song and dance out of these things, but we have made the decision that the hospital will be an accredited hospital, and you'll see significant improvements over time. One of the things we are looking at is bringing in 4 specialists now who would help us with ICU, emergency care, neurology, that's the nerves, deal with strokes and so forth, first time in our country, and also a biotech who is a specialist in biotech. So we want to improve our ICU care, our emergency room care, and to improve our nerve care as well. And we're also bringing in a surgeon who will be with us for a few months to help us to really set standards for our surgical operations here in St. Kitts and Nevis. We had excellent surgeons at the, we have the opportunity to have excellent services, and we are pursuing that. And then again, I want to say that we are finalizing our funding for the new hospital, and I intend to break ground for that new hospital this year. We must, as a country, have a state-of-the-art hospital, one that is accredited, and that would help tourism and build confidence that St. Kitts and Nevis is a place that can deliver good health care. So I wanted to bring that update and say to the people of St. Kitts, with all the things that they're saying about health care, we are moving in the right direction. We have had problems with health care for a long time. This will not be solved overnight, but we are on the right path, and we'll work until we get it resolved. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prime Minister, for taking the time out to engage with the media, as always, and keeping the public abreast of the issues and developments, updating us on your recent travels and the plans for the socio-economic and financial transformation of our Federation, St. Kitts and Nevis, towards a sustainable island state. We appreciate you coming out with us, and we appreciate you, the listening public, as well, for tuning in. Be sure to join us again next month. We will be back with the Prime Minister sharing his developments again as per usual. I am Adelcia O'Connor-Falance, Press Secretary to the Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis, bidding you farewell.